Hi, and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna, and my guest today is my good friend, colleague, mentor, Kelly Daugherty. She is back because I am really excited to talk about after-death communication. So I have not been recording podcast interviews for quite a while. We've had a bit of a break here because Mike and I can't believe, I'm almost embarrassed to say, it has been 2 years since we have interviewed Kelly and a bunch of people for our after-death communication documentary. And still playing around with the timing of it, but I feel like stuff is really starting to come together. I have a better idea of how we're going to be able to use all of this footage that we got over the past 2 years and to finally begin to put it into a documentary form. So I've been busy with that, busy with a full-time job, but I also recently got trained to become an induced after-death communication facilitator through my therapy practice. So yes, guys, I have gone back to doing therapy again, which is also consuming some of my time. And I am so excited to just have Kelly and I talk about this technique that we are applying to our clients who have been grieving. And I just want to give more leverage to this tool because it is changing my client's life, so much so that I'm really happy for them, but after I performed this technique, they're like, I don't really think I need to come weekly anymore. And can I cut down on therapy? So I think Kelly and I are going to talk about that. We'd love to share with you our experiences and what we're experiencing as clinicians, working with grieving people, implementing this tool, how it is helping people, and really what it's about, because there are IADC clinicians trained all over the world. So if you've never heard of this, you should definitely check out, we'll put it in the show notes, the website, for you to be able to find a clinician that is trained in doing this. So I'd like to welcome back to the Path 11 podcast, Kelly Daugherty. Hi, Kelly. Thanks for coming on again.
Hi, April. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about this very fun topic, in my opinion.
I know. I'm so excited too. So after I got trained in it, Kelly and I decided, you know what, we should really do these as intensives, like therapy intensives, and bring people on board and, use this technique, but do it in more of like a retreat-like setting. So we're going to be really excited to tell you at the end what we have in store in mind. We've created a website for this. You can find us on social media now, and we're going to be educating people about this induced after-death communication EMDR technique, and also bringing people to a beautiful retreat center in the Adirondacks to be able to come and heal in a beautiful setting while getting this technique applied to them. So, Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit again, if people haven't listened to one of the 3 podcasts that I've interviewed you on for the Path 11 podcast, about what induced after-death communication is?
Sure, absolutely. So it's a technique that was developed, and I always say his last name wrong, so go ahead, April, to say it for me.
Yes, it is Dr. Botkin.
I always want to say it differently. So he happened to just discover this, like so many of the other therapeutic techniques that are out there people just kind of develop them by accident. And he was working with patients at the VA, working with veterans, and spontaneously they were having an after-death communication from their deceased loved one in session. And so he thought, okay, maybe this first one is a bit of a fluke. And then he kept trying out the technique using EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and found that this was happening a lot. And the more he did it and the more his colleagues did it, the more they started to notice that this was happening very often. Actually, I think at the VA, their stats is over 90%?
90%, yeah.
Yeah, so pretty exciting for people to be able to do. So he developed this intervention, and now people are trained in it. It's been around for a while. There's some definite amazing research on it, on its effectiveness. And what the protocol looks like is it's 2 sessions. preferably 2 days in a row, and about 90 minutes each session, and utilize EMDR, but not EMDR the way maybe most EMDR therapists use it, where they have a memory and they take a negative cognition and they, do all this body work. And this is really focusing on the core sadness of the loss. And the theory behind this is that sadness can really block people from feeling connected still to their loved ones that have died. And so that sadness gets in the way. And so when you're able to just focus on that core sadness, what happens is their sadness kind of peaks and they come back down into a moment of more peace. And once they are in that peaceful place, they're more open to having that after-death communication. And it's happening. It's amazing. I've seen it firsthand in my office. I've even experienced some of the after-death communications my clients have, which have been kind of mind-blowing to me. I'm like, oh, what is going on here? Right. But to be able to see the shifts in just 2 sessions for people that have had this grief that's keeping them really stuck. Maybe they're getting caught up in the guilt or getting caught up in the anger. We don't necessarily address that because we stay with that sadness. And then what happens is by working through that sadness, that guilt and anger just kind of dissolves. Because really, I think the guilt and anger really is just a way to distract us from what we're really feeling. It's that sadness, right? Because we're really good at beating ourselves up. We're really good at pointing out all the things we coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? Or being really angry, right? Because anger can fuel us. It can motivate us sometimes. And so people don't want to sit with that sadness. So they stay stuck with that anger and that guilt. And so this intervention really pushes people maybe a little bit out of their comfort zone to sit with that sadness. And it can get pretty strong and pretty big, but then they do come down and they do feel more at peace. And even that part is that's the part that's truly life-changing.
Yeah. I've seen it firsthand too. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think the ADC is like icing on the cake. That's awesome if it happens, but all the other work that you're doing is really what's making the true difference.
Right. Yeah. And, so this is like a variation of EMDR therapy too. So we can't really call it EMDR therapy because the protocol and how people are trained to apply it is different. So let's take for example, somebody feeling guilty or angry about the death of their loved one. Maybe angry at a family member or feeling guilty that they didn't do someone. In traditional EMDR therapy, we would kind of say with the client, okay, well, let's go with that. And we would do a couple of rounds and eye movement around the guilt. And then maybe the person would say, oh, I'm feeling a little bit better. I don't really feel as guilty, but you know what? I'm really angry at my sister. And then the clinician and the therapist say, okay, well, let's just go with that. Then we're going to go with the anger. And what eye movement therapy has the ability to do is to kind of find really the core of where the person is stuck and bring that up. But in traditional EMDR therapy, we're following the clients in what feelings arise during the session. With IADC, it's very militant, I would say. Like, as the therapist, we need to refocus you back to the sadness. So you might, all of a sudden, as we're doing this IADC protocol, you might say, oh, yeah, well, a time came up when I got into an argument, with my brother and I felt really guilty about that. And we would say, okay, but what's the sadness surrounding that? What's the core sadness about that argument in your brother and now that he's died? And then we are refocusing you back to the sadness that you might want to avoid by bringing up the anger or the guilt. So in this therapy, you cannot run away from talking about addressing or feeling the sadness. And the other really...
you don't necessarily have to talk about it.
Right. Not talk about it. Right. To feel it. You have to feel it. You have to be willing to feel it and to access it. Right. So why don't you talk about how, because, we do a screening process. We've created a little YouTube video for people to watch to see would they be a good candidate for this. But really one of the biggest things, more so than like length of time of loss, is really, are you as the individual able and willing to look at, process, and begin to move into the deep core of sadness? So do you want to talk about that, Kelly?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it can feel kind of intense. It can be a little overwhelming. And one of my clients said sometimes it felt like she was right back at the beginning of her grief again. And so, but the good news is that does peak. And we do come back down into the peaceful place, which is what we want. And so sometimes we have to go through the hard to get to the other side, right? And so it is about being open and willing to be able to say, okay, I'm going to tap into this sadness. Whatever it is that makes me the saddest is that they're not here, that they're not here to see my children. Whatever that saddest part is, and sit with it and feel it and express it, and so everybody's different, just like, grief is different for everybody. We express it differently. So there's people that may cry a lot. And then there's some people that don't show a lot of that emotion, but they're still feeling it in their body. Sometimes it's more of that physical sensations. We can see almost twitches and things like that, or tension or tightness. So it's, I know it probably sounds a little scary to think about, to sit with that sadness and go through it, but we're there to support you. We're there to help you through it and to get to that other side. And that's our goal. I think that's what anybody's goal really needs to be, is that they are wanting to get to that other side,
Right.
that they do want to feel better.
Yeah. And I think the fear around feeling, the sadness is that once I open up that floodgate, it's not going to stop, or I'm not going to stop crying, or, I'm just going to fall to my knees and I'm not going to be able to even be in this therapy session right now if I actually go there. And I've seen people process really deep core sadness and they leave the office smiling and happy. And this huge weight and relief, overcomes them. So, they always say move towards the fear, go towards it. So, that's going to be a key thing. If after this podcast you listen, you're interested and curious and saying, oh, I want to come to this retreat. I'm ready to really deal with my grief. You have to be open and willing and ready to do that. So what else? What else can we kind of share with people about this process?
So let's talk about the best part.
Okay.
Is if you do have the after-death communication, right?
Oh, yeah.
So after we get through that sadness and that we get to that peaceful place, we kind of ask some questions to kind of maybe open that up. And they're saying about 75% of people in private practice setting will have an after-death communication, which, as I'm sure if people are listening to this podcast, they've heard you talk about it, which are naturally occurring, right? There's nothing we choose. I don't wave my magic wand and make it happen. So it just happens. And a lot of people have them in dreams, right? And so the people that have had after-death communications in my office, everybody experiences it differently. Just like if you go to a medium, every medium experiences spirit coming through to them in different ways, right? Some people are more visual, some people are more auditory, the what do they call it? The clairs, right? And so it's the same thing with after-death communication. Some people, they visualize their loved one. Some people, they hear their loved one. Some people, it's just a knowing that their loved one is there. Some people have felt heat or a touch. So everybody's been really different, and it's always amazing to see and even experience with them. Smells, right? Somebody's perfume coming through, a sound of a train, that feeling that they're getting a hug and embraced by their loved one. The vision of seeing their loved ones and getting messages that they're okay. Technology in my office going wild, lights flickering that have never flickered before, wild stuff in here.
Yeah. And what I love about the research that Dr. Bakken talks about in his book, with the numerous sessions that he's done, over the years, this isn't a new therapy. This has actually been around for a while, but it really hasn't hit mainstream. Is that in his clinical studies and documenting the after-death communications, the person always gets what they need to hear by the deceased loved one. So it may not be what you're hoping for or what you want to know, but what I have seen is in the small amount of sessions that I've done so far, is that the message coming through is very specific truly for what that person needs to hear in this moment at this time. And I had one client, I know you've had a couple of shared experiences, where you were smelling the perfume as your client was of their deceased loved ones. And, but one of my clients said, well, did you hear it? Did you hear what my loved one said? And did you experience anything? And I said, no, the therapist really, his job is just to be kind of this passive observer, to just hold space while you are in the interaction with your deceased loved one. And it is usually a message that you definitely need to hear. And it's like very unique and will be different for everyone. Whereas I feel sometimes when people go to mediums, it's like, yes, I'm doing okay and I love you and, miss you and, all is well here on the other side. And that can be like very generic. And that always feels good for us to hear from a medium like, oh, okay, my loved one's okay. They're not in pain. But it's really different when you sit, feel it, and experience it and know it for yourself. And I think that's what makes this therapy. And for all the mediums, I love you, but I just have to say it 10 times more effective in some ways than actually going to a medium. Now, mediumship has its role, a very important role, I feel, with people who are appropriate candidates to get a mediumship reading. And I have seen clients go to mediums and have a lot of progress and healing happen in their grief journey. But myself gone through this, having an actual message delivered to me through my own consciousness with my mom was a game changer. And I really didn't feel a need to have to even sit across from another medium again. And the medium readings that I got, from the people that I went to were fabulous and they were awesome and exactly what I needed in that time. But when I went through this process myself, it's just a totally different internal message and knowing that I don't care, the best medium cannot reproduce that feeling when you are the one kind of in that chair communicating. Because the mediums know, truly, when your person says they're out of pain, okay, well, that's nice to hear. But if you actually experience that, feel that, know that, if that's the message that you're supposed to get from your deceased loved one, it just becomes now this knowing, not just a really comforting thing that you were told. Would you agree with that, with the messages that your clients have gotten?
Yeah, absolutely. Things that, I was, as you were talking, thinking about all the different messages. And one woman who was really struggling with the fact that her children weren't going to get to know her father. And the message that she got so clear from him was that she is a part of her father, right? She came from her father. So her children already know him.
That's so
and it was beautiful, and it was amazing. And one woman who, didn't feel like she needed to wear her mom's ashes anymore because her mom was everywhere. She wasn't just there. And for me personally speaking, I think mine was a little different and unique. It was only one session and there was somebody else that was wanting to get some practice. So I volunteered because I like to know what I'm asking my clients to go through. And, this had been, 29 years since my mom had died. So I was really curious to see what that was going to look like for me and be. And I tapped into that core sadness really fast. I was shocked at still the amount of sadness that was there. And it didn't last long, but it definitely showed up right away. And what came up for me was memories of my mom. And I think that's one of the things that I've struggled with is that, I was 14. I've now lived, 2/3 of my life without her. And, memories are malleable and it changes. And so being so young, it's hard to always remember all the things about my mom. And what came through was just like a download of memories. It was like memories that I had totally forgotten about, hadn't thought about in probably 30 years or more. And the feeling to have those memories, I can get emotional thinking about it, come back to me. I wish I could have written them all down because, it just happened so fast and it was like coming. I mean, it was just like a slideshow. It was wild for me. And I think that's what I really needed. That I could still access that those were still there. And although it may look different than what you're thinking of as other people are thinking about as an after-death communication, I got what I needed.
Right. Yeah, it can come in all different types of shapes and forms. And I remember mine. I wish too, I wrote all of mine down. So I think one of the things that I'm going to do for my clients now is I really want to record the sessions for them so that they can just kind of talk in this stream of consciousness of what they're experiencing, when we start to induce it so they can remember, and would highly encourage people to write it down because there can be so much that you can forget. but I remember feeling the sense that, my eyes were closed and I saw my mom walk through the therapy door, like the office that I was having this in, and felt the couch move and felt her sit right next to me. And
Chills.
yeah, and she turned to me and said, "This is one therapy session I'm not going to walk out of." And, that wasn't even in my mind. My mom and I had, of course, done family therapy on and off ever since I was a young girl. And then when I was a teenager, forget about it. Things would get heated. And I can honestly say that every therapist that we ever saw in every session that we went through, she got up and would leave the therapy session. The last therapy session I remember having with my mom, with a therapist, that was the first thing that I said to the therapist. I was like, "Look, my mom has a tendency to walk out when things get really rough during therapy. So can we have a rule that neither of us can walk out of the therapy?" And my mom agreed to it. And the therapist was very good about setting these boundaries around our therapy session. I think it was like by the third session that I had with this therapist, boom, my mom was up and out. So and that's not something that was even a part of talking about or processing, during my IADC. These were just personal things that, were like kind of between my mom and I. And that statement, when my mom came in and reassured me that, it was almost like, I'm not going to leave this IADC session. I'm going to be here with you through the whole thing, was just wild, because I wouldn't have made that up. I guess that's the other thing for me in my experience. This wasn't even a thought that I was thinking about. It really felt like this message and hearing those words was outside of me, really coming like I was having a conversation. And that really put me at ease to be able to have more visions and communication with her. And I think I also had memories, that had come up as well. But my grief felt really complete after that. I would say something really shifted and was so helpful. So Kelly and I are so passionate about this and wanting to just bring this to you guys. So we've come up with the idea and said, well, why don't we do this in a retreat-like setting? So Kelly, why don't you explain some of our brainstorming ideas? And we're almost ready to pull the trigger. We have dates set for 2025. We have the place picked out. We're just finalizing some final numbers. So it's going to be a little bit more than just 90-minute sessions. So take it away, Kelly. Let them know what we're going to be doing.
Well, I think what I want to backtrack a little bit. What I think I like so much about this model is it kind of breaks a lot of the therapy rules, right?
For
You
sure.
and I are used to 53-minute sessions. That's what insurance tells us we can bill for, right? That's the max.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot that can happen after 53 minutes. And there's some research out there that actually some of the breakthroughs happen around 70 minutes. And unfortunately, because of insurance models and things like that, we're kind of stuck. And so this model, being able to have that extended time, where I've had longer than 90-minute sessions with IADCs, it's gone definitely longer. You're able to make through some of those breakthroughs so much faster than traditional therapy where you come once a week. And April and I have been talking about this for years, right? This model that we have that needs to really be challenged and looked at differently, because we have created a model that you have to stay in therapy forever and you have to keep coming back every week for your 53 minutes. And I want to see my clients get better. I want them to tell me, you know what, I don't need to see you as often. I want to be able to successfully discharge my clients because I want them to feel better. They shouldn't believe that they have to be in therapy the rest of their lives. Now, do they maybe need to come back from time to time? Yes. Do I do that in my own life, right? I'm back in therapy now, seeing somebody. So, and then I'll be okay for a while. Then I'll go back and have a little booster session, right? And that's okay. And so this model, I think, is really breaking a lot of those rules that we've been taught and is going to allow so much more. And that's what we see with our clients. It really does allow them to be on a different part on their grief journey. And obviously, grief isn't something we get over. It's something we learn to live with. But I think being able to work through the sadness can help you learn to live even more. And also knowing that you can connect to your loved one on your own, right? And how do you move forward with that after the therapy is so important. So we've decided to do this at Silver Bay YMCA in Lake George in the Adirondacks of New York. It's beautiful. We were blown away. We had looked at a couple of different places, and I don't know how many times April and I are like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Oh, wow. Oh my God. I didn't even know this place was here.
I know. Oh, I love it. Beautiful there.
And so we are going to create a beautiful weekend where you come Friday night and we're going to set up an altar of our loved ones and reflect and be able to share with each other about our loved ones, engage in the ritual, which is so important in our grief journey. And then the next 2 days, you're going to have that opportunity to have your IADC sessions with myself or April. We're keeping this really intimate and small, max of 4 people at a time, because we want to make sure that you're having the space and the time and the connection you need. After, your IADC or before, you're going to have a Reiki session, which is amazing. I think it's so different and unique than maybe what you're going to get if you just found somebody online to do this with. And then we're going to connect in nature, be out there on the lake. It's so healing and it just feels so good there. And so having these meals together, this opportunity, having a closing ritual, it's just going to be pretty amazing, magical weekend. And I can't wait.
Yeah, it really is this blend of integrating other rituals and practices, from around the world. So we are going to be doing some shamanic work. We are creating these rituals in this ancestor altar to honor the ancestors. The places at Silver Bay, they all have fireplaces. So we literally have this beautiful altar, and the ancestors represent the fire, element of transmutation and, being able to help us kind of take these emotions, and we'll be able to feed the fire. We'll also be able to feed the ancestors. So, we will bring things that they like to eat and place them on the altar. We will open up sacred space. We will be able to invite them in and really setting our intentions to say, please be with us, make sure that you're here with us, and be able to tell stories about the person that we're grieving, because that is the thing, once your person dies, it just feels like, where is the time to jump back in and tell stories unless you're with family or, maybe a friend will ask you. But there's going to be this beautiful component of being in a small community group to be able to share your favorite memories, how the person died, to be able to talk about it and not feel like you're going to offend somebody if you're talking about, your loved one and what had happened. So, that's the other element here about doing this with others. So we have the altar shamanic tradition there. The Saturday night, we're going to be doing a fire ritual. So we're going to be offering some things to our ancestors to further our healing. Again, working with the element of fire, but then being surrounded by the lake to support our emotions. So the element of water is huge at this place. It's like you look out and you can't not see a lake. Everywhere you go, every building that you're in is amazing. And then they also have the facilities of feeding us. So like all of your meals are taken care of. You're basically going to eat the entire time. You're going to have dinner when you come for Friday, breakfast, lunch, dinner. We're probably going to supply some extra snacks throughout the day. You'd be well. And on Sunday before you leave, you're going to get breakfast and lunch. So you don't even have to worry about cooking or food or anything like that. I know I'm going to be providing some other sound healing things. And then I get to bring my very talented Reiki students who have been trained by me, which makes me feel very comfortable knowing that they have been trained in how to hold space for people who are grieving. They come with a lot of experience, and they are going to be offering these Reiki sessions, to people, like we said. So the 2 people that are in sessions with Kelly and I, the other 2 people are going to be immersed in their energy work, which is so vital and another great component that never gets talked about or used in the traditional clinical setting. So I'm really excited to do this more in a group retreat setting. Not that I don't love doing it with individuals in like the therapy office, but then what happens is these people have these amazing breakthroughs. Then they go home, and if they're lucky, they might have a spouse or maybe a friend that they can call and talk to. But then there they are again, off into their world, or taking care of their child, or going to work the next day. So I think really providing the space to allow you to sit in the energy of this experience and share it with other people who are going through it is going to be beyond what anybody could ever expect, because that is the piece I think that's missing in the traditional, therapeutic setting of us doing it and people coming to our clinical offices and, applying this and then going home and then coming back the next day and then like they're basically done. So this is really going to create just a very expansive, I would say, and just cumulative effect of allowing you to truly heal and then build bonds, because I've never left a retreat with women or men that I've gone to and not felt like they turned into family. And you create like these lifelong relationships with people at these retreats. So I would love to also meet some of you. I know our listeners who have been listening and have been with me for a long time. I know that you're grieving. It'd be also cool to just meet you in person. But here's a little bit of a catch. You do have to do a pre-screening call with us. We need to make sure that you are in the right space, that you're ready to address that core sadness. We have a couple of intake questions, learning and understanding if you're taking any medication. So Kelly, do you want to just go over a little bit about what the pre-screening call looks like and how we'll kind of set that up with people before we know if they're eligible to come and participate?
Absolutely. So we'll set up probably a 20 to 30 minute call with myself or April. Just email us if you're interested. And I'm sure April will put all that information in our show notes, or check out our website, IADCintensives.com. And that pre-screening call is really to get to know you a little bit, especially if you're not in this area. We just want to make sure that this is a good fit for you. You're going to be spending your time and your energy with us, and we want to make sure it's going to be the right fit for all of us. So we'll be asking about how long it's been since your loved one died. We do recommend that it be at least a year. If it's a little less than a year, we can talk about that. We talk about what kind of therapy you've had up until this point, where maybe your stuck points with your grief are, whether you're willing to truly sit with that sadness. We're also going to talk about, like April said, if you're on any certain antidepressants, because there is some that the research shows that can limit the chance of having an ADC. And so we want to make sure that you're aware of that. It doesn't mean that you can't still come, because as I said, that ADC is really icing on the cake. The core of what you're going to get is the eye movement therapy and the focusing on the sadness. So, and then we're just going to, talk about your goals. What is it that you want to achieve from this weekend? And are you able to attend this week, the weekend it is? And if not, putting you on a wait list for future ones. We're really hoping to do this multiple times a year, especially because we can only offer it to 4 people. And a couple things I just want to mention is that your IADC sessions are individual sessions. So you'll be either meeting with myself or April. And so those 90-minute sessions are not in the group format. I just want to be clear. And then also you're going to have your own room and own bathroom in a very beautiful building, hotel-like suite. So you don't have to worry about going to, because I've been to some where you have to kind of share a room with some strangers. You're going to have your own space and kind of be able to reflect and process. But with a balcony overlooking the lake, I mean, what better place?
I know. I love the place. So we would love to hear from you. We are starting to book up. We have a lot of interest, especially for this first retreat. So a couple of ways that you can reach out to us. You can go to our website. We'll put it in the show notes. It is IADCintensives.com. You can email us, which is staff, STAFF, at IADCintensives.com. You're more than welcome to also shoot me a quick email if that's easiest at april@pap11productions.com. I can make sure that we can get you over to our little intake system there. And I would really encourage you to check out the website. Take a look at the lake. You can also Google Silver Bay YMCA Retreat Center. It is in Silver Bay, New York, which is close to the Lake George region. And you can see all of the different, meeting rooms and spaces. We tried to put some of the pictures up of where we're going to be meeting. We might have to go up and take a couple more photos before we get up there. And would love to speak with you and see if you're eligible and what time would be good. Again, we're holding these in New York. We won't be actually traveling outside of New York to facilitate these. So we are always going to stay in our home base for these retreats. So you will have to travel if you want to come and see us. But again, your lodging will be included. All of your meals will be included. If you are going to fly out, you'll have to pay for your own flight. But once you get here, everything will be taken care of. So head on over to our website, IADCintensives.com. Click on retreats, click on retreats for grieving individuals, because we're not just stopping here, people. We are going to hold retreats for clinicians. We're also going to be doing some continuing bonds, conferences that are going to offer a huge amount of CE credits and get you certified to become a grief-informed professional. So that is also in the works. You'll see that there on the website. And the other thing that I'm going to be bringing to you, if you are listening to this podcast and either you're a clinician around the world that has actually performed some IADC sessions, email me. I want to bring you on the podcast and hear what your experience has been like as a clinician applying this technique. And if you are someone that has had a therapist and you have done these sessions, I am collecting stories. So I'm going to be doing a little IADC segment on the Path 11 podcast and bringing some stories to you. So I have two guests that will be coming on. I have a couple more in the wings. And if you hear this and stumble upon it, email me, april@path11productions.com. I would love to hear your story and do a pre-screen for a podcast interview. Anything else, Kelly, before we end?
No, I'm just super excited. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can follow me on Greater Life Grief Counseling on Facebook and Instagram. And we also have our new page, IADC Intensives, on Facebook and Instagram as well. So like and follow us there, and hope to get to meet some of you and be able to help you on this next part of your grief journey.
Wonderful. And I think from now on, I am going to sign off and say to all of you, shine on, the world needs your beautiful light. That is the inscription of the ring that my mom was wearing when she died. And I always felt so awkward at the end of podcasts. I'm like, okay, I'm always like, bye everyone, take care. See you later, like I would if I was on the phone with you. But I think this is going to be my new sign off, especially as I begin to move even deeper into this work. So thank you all for listening. It does feel good to be back and recording these podcasts. The After Death Communication documentary from Path 11 is starting post-production, so I am excited about that. And I'm going to sign off now. Thank you for listening. Shine on. The world needs your beautiful light. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's show. If you haven't already, please subscribe and rate and review the Path 11 podcast in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, this podcast is made possible by our sponsor, Path 11 TV. Visit path11tv.com to start a 7-day free trial and start streaming over 100 hours of exclusive video content on consciousness, healing, and life after death. That's path11tv.com, and be sure to use coupon code PODCAST30 to take 30% off your annual membership. Start satisfying your spiritual curiosity with a membership to Path 11 TV today. Bye for now.